My brother tried to humiliate me at my wedding. His smile vanished when I cut his mic. 5 minutes before the champagne toasts were supposed to begin, I realized my brother had not agreed to be my best man out of love. He had agreed because it gave him a microphone and a captive audience. I was standing in the quiet dimness of the groom's suite, the faint bass of the reception band vibrating through the floorboards. I was holding 3 folded sheets of hotel stationery that I had just picked off the carpet. They had slipped out of the inner pocket of Leo's tuxedo jacket, which he had carelessly draped over a chair. I only recognized them as his speech because my name was scrawled at the top in his thick, erratic handwriting. I meant to just place the papers back on the table. I wanted to believe that, for once, he was taking something seriously. But my eyes caught a sentence halfway down the first page, and the room seemed to suddenly lose all its oxygen. I read the first page, then the second, then the third. My fingers tightened around the paper until my knuckles ached. This was not a speech. It was not a collection of funny anecdotes or a gentle roasting of the groom. It was a calculated character assassination. Leo had written a monologue designed to humiliate me in front of my new wife, her family, and every colleague I respected. He had devoted a whole paragraph to a deeply painful period in my sophomore year of college when I had suffered from severe panic attacks, framing my anxiety as a hilarious joke about me being a fragile little weirdo who used to cry in the dorm hallways. He had written a punchline about how shocked he was that Sarah, my beautiful, brilliant bride, hadn't run away yet, heavily implying that I had somehow tricked her into this marriage. He even included a thinly veiled, mocking reference to her parents' wealth, painting me as a desperate charity case. It was cruel, it was precise, and it was exactly the kind of thing Leo did best. The worst part was that a younger version of me was not entirely surprised. I had spent my entire life acting as the shock absorber for my family's dysfunction. Leo was the golden child, charming, reckless, and chronically unemployed. I was the reliable one, the quiet engineer who paid his own way, fixed the things Leo broke, and never asked for help. When it came time to choose a best man, I had actually wanted to ask David, my former boss and the mentor who had guided me through my 20s like a real father. But my mother had cried. She had called me 3 times a week for a month, using the family prayer I had been trained to obey. Keep the peace. He's your brother. He just lost another job and he's feeling low. He needs a win, Mark. Don't humiliate him by picking a stranger. So I had compromised. I had been reasonable so other people could be selfish without consequences. I had asked Leo. Standing in the suite, looking at the cruel words he planned to broadcast to 200 people, I felt the familiar weight of my family's expectations pressing down on my chest. The old me would have put the speech back. The old me would have sat at the head table, forcing a stiff smile while Leo tore me down, gripping Sarah's hand under the tablecloth while her parents looked on in horror. The old me would have accepted the humiliation because making a scene would upset Mom. Then I looked at myself in the mirror. I was wearing a custom suit I had paid for with my own hard-earned money. I was 32 years old, standing just a few yards away from a woman who loved me unconditionally, a woman who never once made me feel like I had to earn my right to exist in her presence. I was building a life outside the shadow of the house that had taught me to shrink. I folded the speech, slid it into my own inside pocket, and walked out the door. My hands were perfectly steady. The reception was being held in a grand, glass-walled conservatory. The evening sun was filtering through the trees, casting a golden glow over the white roses and crystal centerpieces. It was breathtaking. It was a space Sarah and I had built together, and I was not going to let my brother burn it down for sport. I bypassed the head table and walked straight toward the corner where the event coordinator and the bandleader were standing. The coordinator, a sharp, intuitive woman named Claire, saw the look on my face and stepped forward immediately. Mark, is everything okay? It's almost time for the toasts. I need a favor, Claire. I kept my voice low and calm. When my brother steps up to the microphone, I need the audio cut, completely dead. Do not let his mic go live. Claire blinked, her professional smile faltering for a fraction of a second. She glanced toward the head table where Leo was already tapping his fork against a champagne glass, soaking in the preliminary attention. She looked back at me, searching my eyes. She didn't ask for the family drama. She just nodded. Understood. the bandleader whispered, his hand hovering over the soundboard. I can lay down a soft jazz track to cover the dead air. Give you time to pivot. Thank you. I walked back to the head table and took my seat beside Sarah. She looked at me, her brow furrowing slightly. Where were you? Leo is about to start. I know, I whispered, reaching under the table to hold her hand. Just trust me. Leo stood up. He buttoned his jacket with a theatrical flourish, flashed a brilliant, movie star smile at the crowd, and grabbed the microphone from the stand. The room quieted down. My mother, sitting at the family table just in front of us, leaned forward with her hands clasped under her chin, beaming with pride at her favorite son. Leo brought the microphone to his mouth. Ladies and gentlemen. Nothing. No amplification. Just his raw voice barely carrying past the first row of tables. He frowned, tapping the metal grill of the microphone. Thump, thump, no sound. He looked over at the band. Hey, audio guy, we got a dead stick here. The bandleader offered an apologetic shrug and immediately cued the band. A smooth, elegant jazz chord filled the room, completely drowning out whatever Leo was trying to say next. The guests murmured politely, assuming it was just a minor technical glitch. Leo's smile tightened into a look of genuine annoyance. He hated when the spotlight malfunctioned. He turned toward me, waving the microphone. Mark, tell them to fix this. I didn't tell them to fix it. Instead, I stood up. I didn't look angry. I felt an overwhelming, profound sense of clarity. I picked up the spare microphone resting on the sweetheart table. I flicked the switch. It worked perfectly. Thank you, Leo, I said, my voice echoing clearly and warmly across the conservatory. It seems we are having some technical difficulties with that mic, but please, take your seat. I actually want to change the program up a bit. Leo froze. The script in his head had just been shredded. Wait, Mark, I can just project my voice. Take a seat, Leo, I said. My voice did not raise in volume, but the absolute authority in it made the room go entirely still. It was a tone I had never used with him in my entire life. It wasn't a request. Leo looked at our mother. She looked confused, her smile fading. But with 200 people watching, Leo had no choice. His face flushed a dark, angry red, and he slowly sank back into his chair, the dead microphone dropping onto the table with a dull clatter. When you get married, I said, turning to address the room, you spend a lot of time thinking about the people who helped shape you into the person standing at the altar. You think about the people who held you to a higher standard, who taught you what respect looks like, and who showed up for you when there was absolutely no obligation for them to do so. I looked out into the crowd and met the eyes of David, my old mentor. He was sitting with my colleagues, his silver hair catching the light, his expression steady and proud. Family is supposed to be our foundation, I continued, but sometimes, the truest family we have are the people we choose along the way, the people who see our potential, instead of our vulnerabilities. For the past 10 years, there is one man who has been a guiding light in my life, both professionally and personally. He taught me how to build bridges that don't collapse, and how to build a life of integrity. I extended my free hand toward his table. David, I know this is entirely off the cuff, but there is no one else I would rather have toast this new chapter. Would you do Sarah and me the honor? The applause was immediate and warm. David looked surprised for a moment, then profoundly moved. He stood up, buttoned his jacket, and walked to the front of the room. I handed him my microphone. David didn't have a prepared speech, but he didn't need one. He spoke from the heart. He spoke about the young, anxious kid he had hired out of college, and how he had watched that kid work harder than anyone else in the firm to become a man of quiet strength and unshakable character. He spoke about how Sarah brought out the joy in me that I used to hide. By the time he raised his glass, there were tears in Sarah's eyes, and her father was nodding in deep respect. It was dignified. It was real. It was everything Leo's speech was designed to destroy. When David finished, we embraced, and the room erupted in cheers. The dinner service began seamlessly. Sarah leaned her head against my shoulder. That was beautiful, she whispered. But what really happened? I'll tell you later, I said, kissing her forehead. Right now, I just want to enjoy dinner with my wife. But I knew the peace wouldn't last the hour. People like my brother do not lose the spotlight quietly. They either own the room, or they try to burn it down for noticing someone else. An hour later, I stepped out onto the stone patio to get some fresh air. The night was cool, and the sky was thick with stars. The heavy oak door swung open behind me, and the footsteps that followed were fast and aggressive. "What the hell was that?" Leo demanded. I turned around. Leo was shaking with fury. Behind him stood my mother, wringing her hands, her face pulled into a mask of frantic distress. "You humiliated him, Mark," my mother gasped, stepping forward to shield Leo exactly the way she had since we were children. "In front of everyone, his friends, your wife's family. He had a beautiful speech prepared. You made him look like a fool." "I didn't make him look like anything," I said calmly. "The microphone broke. I improvised." "You did that on purpose," Leo hissed, stepping out from behind her. "You couldn't stand the fact that people were going to look at me for 5 minutes. You've always been jealous, you rigid, boring." I didn't let him finish. I reached into my inside pocket, pulled out the 3 folded sheets of hotel stationery, and held them out. Leo's words died in his throat, the color completely drained from his face. He instinctively patted his own jacket pocket, realizing it was empty. "I found your speech," I said. My voice was dangerously quiet. My mother looked back and forth between us. "What is that? Mark, what is going on?" I handed the papers to her. "Read it. Read what your son was going to say to my wife's family on my wedding day." My mother unfolded the papers. Her eyes darted across the first few lines. I watched her face. I waited for the shock. I waited for the maternal outrage that her eldest son would plan something so vicious against her youngest. Instead, I watched her face settle into a defensive pout. "Well," she stammered, looking away from me. "It's just his sense of humor. Mark, you know Leo. He likes to roast people. It's comedy. You're always so sensitive. You take everything so seriously." There it was, the ultimate betrayal. It wasn't the speech. It was the fact that my mother could look at evidence of my brother's cruelty and still ask me to absorb the blow. "A roast requires affection," I said, the words heavy and final. "This was an execution, and you are standing here holding the gun he loaded, telling me I shouldn't be upset about the bullet." "Mark, please." She reached for my arm. "Keep the peace. It's your wedding." I stepped back, out of her reach. Peace that depends on me swallowing poison is not peace. It's just training, and I quit. I looked at Leo. The panic in his eyes was real now. He was finally standing in the consequences of his own actions, and there was no one to rescue him. "You didn't want to celebrate me today, Leo. You wanted to punish me for having something you didn't. You wanted to make me look small so you could feel big." I shook my head. "But you just look pathetic, and you're done. You can stay for the open bar, or you can leave, but you will not speak to me for the rest of the night. And if you ever try to pull something like this in my home, around my wife, you will never see me again." I didn't wait for a response. I didn't need one. I turned around and walked back toward the glass conservatory. When I stepped back inside, the music was lively, the lights were warm, and Sarah was laughing with a group of our friends on the dance floor. She saw me, her eyes lighting up, and she held out her hand. I took it. I pulled her close, the rhythm of the music washing over us. I looked back toward the patio doors, but they remained closed. I didn't look back again. I didn't dance as the son they could control or the brother they could use. I danced as a man who had finally learned that real love gives you dignity, and that protecting your own peace is the most beautiful victory of all.